Hey guys, this is Mithun from Team Widget, and for today's unboxing we'll be looking at the much awaited GTX 960 and in particular the G1 gaming SKU from Gigabyte. Now, before we begin unboxing this particular graphics card, let's take a look at GTX 960. Now the GTX 960 comes with the GM206 GPU, while the GTX 980 and 970 that came before this had the GM204 GPU. Now, if you compare the 980's GM204 versus the 960 GM206, you start to see a pattern. Is that everything is exactly half of what the 980 came with. So you had half the CUDA cores, half the streaming multiprocessors, half the bus width for the memory, and also half the memory. And then you had half the texture units, half the ROPs, and you start to see and you expect that the performance would be exactly half as well. But that's something we'll reserve for the test to conclude. So later on, you see that the word sweet spot is going to get thrown around a lot. And that's because historically, if you look at all the cards that NVIDIA has come with, you start to see that the 60 class, that is the X60 class, tends to be really popular. So you had the 460, which was really popular. Then came the 560, the 560 Ti, the 660, 660 Ti, 760, and now the 960. Even in Steam's hardware survey, which lists the most popular graphic cards that gamers tend to use, you see the 60 class GPUs coming up at the real top. So we expect the 960 to be somewhat really popular as well. When you compare the 660 to the 760, you saw a performance increment of around 14 to 15%. Now, the documentation for the 960 states that there will be a performance increment of about 8 to 10%, which is what we were expecting given that the 980 did not provide a really great boost as compared to the 780. Now, the last two things that we'd like to mention is that the 960 is designed with a TDP of 120 watts, while the 980 was designed with a TDP of 165 watts. And lastly, the 980 supported 4-way SLI, the 970 did 3-way SLI, and the 960 here does 2-way SLI. Now, compared to the competition, it's being pitted against the R9285 from AMD. Now that card debuted at 19,990 rupees, and if this 960 were to be priced at around 15 to 16,000 for something around the reference design, then we see it taking the crown in the price to performance segment purely based on price. Now with that being said, let's start with the unboxing. So Gigabyte has 3 SKUs of the 960 at launch, and the G1 Gaming is the best one they have when it comes to overclocking and cooling. So let's open up the box. We see the G1 Gaming card. We'll take a look at that later on. We have an accessories panel. In that we get to see two 4-pin Molex to 6-pin PCIe adapters, a quick guide for the graphics card, and the driver disk. Now, being the best card that Gigabyte has to offer in the 960 series at launch means that you're going to get quite a lot of features with this one. So we begin those lists by looking at the cooler first. Now the chassis is metal in this case. If you looked at the other 960 video or the 970 video we've done, you'd see that the external chassis was made of plastic. In this one it is metal, and even on the rear there's a protective backplate which is also made out of metal. Then you have 3 fans, so this would be called the WindForce 3 technology, and a much better heatsink. So you can see that there are concentrated aluminum blocks underneath each particular fan. You have 4 heat pipes going all through the card, and even the VRM circuitry is being covered over here. And you can see that this particular card uses 2 6-pin PCIe power connectors. And even though this is the best connector, best 960 card, you only have two-way SLI support. That's an architectural limitation. And here on this end you see a similar nomenclature as we'd seen before, where the adapters, the connectors are labeled A, B, C, D1 and D2, so you can check the operation manual to figure out what combination of displays you can get to achieve 4 working displays at any given time. Now the WinForce technology in this particular card, and as will most 970s and 980s we've seen so far, has something called silent cooling. So what happens is, if the card is not drawing a lot of power, the fans shut off, and that is indicated by these 2 LEDs over here. It says silent stop. That's it. Otherwise, when the graphic card is operational, you will see this WinForce logo lighting up in a nice blue color. Now this particular card achieves a really high overclock, and you can push it even further. So the base clock for this particular one is 1241 megahertz, and the boost clock goes all the way to 1304 megahertz. Now compared to the default base clock that comes with a 960, which is 1126 or 1127, I guess, that is a considerable increment. So you're going to get a good value for your investment when it comes to these cards. So that's it for this particular unboxing. Do check out other videos that we've done in the 960 series and the 970 series from Gigabyte.